Hey, what's going on, guys? It is Master RKO, bringing you another introduction video for our last introduction for game types. Today we're going to be taking a look at the new game type Control, a few things that's going to be taking part in this new game type that Treyarch has brought us, how it's going to affect some of our League play game types, some of the tips that you can learn as a beginner just getting into the game type itself, what are some of the nuances of it, and how to be successful, especially as a beginner. As well as we're going to take a look at some of the roles that you may want to take up in this new game type Control, and also just a few things here and there that may just help you get that extra rank when the game first comes out. So, with that, we're going to take a look at the final game type for our introductions, Control. So looking at Control, we'll first look at the rules here, same as we'd have in the last two videos. First of all, you're going to notice a lot of the rules are going to be very similar to Search and Destroy. And if you haven't looked at Search and Destroy, go back and take a look at that intro video and come back when you're finished. A lot of the rules are similar, and you'll notice a few similarities and differences between them both. But while we're on the same topic, we'll continue moving on through this one real quick. So, Control is somewhat like Search and Destroy in the sense that you have a limited number of lives. There's two objectives on the map, and there's a lot of strategy involved while keeping your self alive with your team. Where it differs is that there's still a respawn aspect to the game. So as you can see, there's a minute and a minute and a half time limit on each round. The round limit right now is 3, with a win limit is 3, round limit is 5. So it's basically the first of 3 rounds. That will probably change when League Play comes out. As of right now, we don't have a full-on list of rules so far. Now there is a capture time on certain objectives, and that time goes up over time, so basically you have to sit in the point for a full minute. There is no delay time, and there is extra time if someone's on a point. When somebody is on that objective, some of that objective time goes away, and we'll take a look at that later. The time does increase the more players that are in the objective. And each player has a specific number of lives once your lives are up. And we'll get into more of this a little more when we get into the actual map itself, which may get a little more self-explanatory, I guess. So we will go ahead, I'm going to set the timer up just a little bit, just so that way we have time to go over a few things. So in a sense, basically what Control is there's 2 points on a map. Each team has a set number of lives for each round. When a player dies, that number of lives goes down. Once all the lives are ran up, the round is over and the team with lives left wins. However, the other way to win is if you're on offense, it is to capture both points before time runs up. How you capture a point is by standing in those points and letting a meter fill up completely by you or more than one team member being in that point. However, enemies can both kill you and or take some of that time away if they get into the point as well, while no one else is. So it leaves a little extra strategy involved, so we'll go ahead and take a look at this and how it is. So right now we're on offense. As you can see, I have 2 points to capture. So, and you can also see a list of 26 lives. So as a full team, every time you die, that list would go down, and then once that number gets below the amount of players you have on your team, meaning 5, your players no longer respawn. Whoever is alive left has to try to win the game on their own. Now, these are what the points look like, and it kind of looks like hardpoint in a sense, except there's 2 of them. And the defense cannot technically capture. Their job is to eliminate you before you can capture both points. As you can see, the time is running down and the game is afoot. Now when you're on a point, you can see time begins to go up.
We're capturing Alpha.
You can also see that the time in the left corner the game clock stops. See, when there's only a minute and a half, you have a limited amount of time to capture the points, and as you can see as the bar is going up, it takes a bit to actually get that bar filled up. So, capturing both points in that short amount of time can take a while. If you hop out of the point, the time stays there, but if an enemy were to jump in there while I'm out, the bar would start to decrease, and the game clock continues to move. So while you're on offense, your objective is to either capture both points by staying in them, defending the area, and making sure that you get all 3 bars filled up, or by completely eliminating the defensive team. So, being on offense, what would some of the rules be like for this? Well, you're going to have objective players, same as hardpoint. You're going to have a submachine gun player, more than likely, someone up close and personal, running like a SOG or a GKS. However, you're also going to have your, what we called in the hardpoint video, your roamers. They're going to be around the point, same as this was, because this was a hardpoint as well when we did that video. They're going to be running around the outside of this, getting kills and making sure that no one gets to that point, and you're lowering the enemy team's number of lives. Here's where it kind of gets interesting. See, in hardpoint, you can die as many times as you want, and that's it. In this game, you have a certain number of lives, so when you die, it goes down. So you can't just roam around the map and go all willy-nilly and jump into fights. You have to also keep aware that you may make a play that's not favorable, or be in an area and get caught by other enemies, and it will drop your life count. So where in hardpoint you can just run and gun and do whatever, in a game like Control, there's that respawn aspect that's got a hidden search and destroy objective feel to it. Because once your numbers go down, that's it. So as you can see, I captured that point, and you actually saw that the time went back up. That's because when you capture a point, you get more time. So you can clutch up a game by capturing a point late, and then getting that time back to recapture again. So as you can see, I've got 1 point down, and now there's only 1. So now the focus would be more on this point. And you can capture two at a time, have half your team on one, half your team on the other. Snipers might be a little bit of an issue on game types like this, and certain maps will be favored towards offense or defense. If you're more of an offensive map, you might get these captures pretty quickly, and being on the defensive side might be a little harder. Because when it comes to being offensive, you can really just push up, hold angles, and make sure that the enemy can't get to you. Make sure you got people in the objective while the people in the back just pick people off at range. And really, the objective players just have the same job as hardpoint, and really, that's what it is. It's a mixture between hardpoint and search and destroy. And for certain maps, it's pretty fun, and others, it can be a real pain. But getting used to the game type is going to take some time, especially because it's new. But a lot of people seem to like it. Depending on which maps they finalize before League Play comes out will be interesting. But as you can see, as the bar fills up, capture the second one, and the round will end. So that's on offensive side. Seems pretty simple. You capture the points, you get kills, make sure your team doesn't run out of lives first, you win the round. So since offensive, at least on certain maps, can be pretty interesting, defense is about the same way. When it comes to being on defense, your job is similar, except you don't have to be in the point to win. Your job as a defender is to make sure they don't get in the point. And you can actually get in the point to lower their time if they're not in it, but it's not necessary. You can sit back off the point and hold down angles, make sure that there's pinch points that you can wrap on people and get behind the offense. Hold choke points so that way they can't push through and get to that second area, or just mow them down in certain maps, especially where there's straight areas. For instance, the B site here is more than likely going to be more difficult when it comes to this map. The A side is going to be favored towards the offensive team. It's very close to them. They're probably going to get there first. But the B side is going to be a little bit more difficult. Having someone, especially like a sniper or a good assault rifle, can hold down this middle, have someone off to the side, maybe in the trailer, holding down the flanks and watching through the windows, and people in the wood building can hold this down from all sorts of angles. You're going to want to watch your flank when it comes to control especially, just like you would in Search and Destroy. Because offensive players can definitely send people around and try to throw off the enemy team. And especially when in a game type where lives matter, you want to make sure that you're always keeping track of that kill count. Lives get too low, but you need to make a play, you may hesitate a little too much. So, one thing to always keep in mind, especially on defense, is your live count. On offense, you can keep track of it as much too, but really, when it comes to certain offensive tactics, you can play out your offensiveness and still get those kills. Whereas for defense, you're making sure and you have to stick your neck out to make sure that the offensive team doesn't get on that point. Offensive players can just play that to their advantage. On defense, your roles will look very similar. You'll have players up close and personal, just making sure that no one gets in the point, having those assault rifles back you up from afar, cutting off the choke points, and maybe even a sniper or two, especially on defense. Just making sure that that one person that peeks gets their head taken off every time they try to round the corner in the wrong spot. So, with that being said, control actually seems pretty straightforward. It's got a limited amount of lives, but you hold a hard point, basically. But it's got a couple objectives, and when your lives run out, you're done, like Search and Destroy. So what are some of the tactics on this? Because out of the 3 game types, it seems that this one's actually a little more similar to both, but also a little more easier to understand. And that's where it gets kind of tricky. Because it's not that the gameplay or the game style gets weird when it comes to control, more it's the map. Because certain maps are going to be more favored towards offensive or defensive, same as Search and Destroy, and the map's not going to really flip. You just flip sides on offensive or defense. So the key is going to be figuring out which maps are more favored to which side, and realize which side you're going to need to worry about more. For this game type, where you spawn, like I said before, this A site is going to be easy. You're going to be able to have a bunch of people holding down certain sight lines while people are inside, and you've got a lot of cover. So, as a defender, you're going to use that to your advantage, but as an offensive player, you can also use that to your advantage. You could save that one for last, or send people back through this long back path and catch people off guard that aren't preparing for you to hit that fast. Catch the people up in the top window, or stealth through here and get a double or triple kill, and maybe even set up the chance to hop into the point yourself, or even do a double hit and have people on each point. Whereas defenders, you can kind of do the same thing, you just have to make sure that you're not pushing too far up. Where it seems to end up being that, like for Search and Destroy, the defense has a lot more freedom. Control, it's more the offensive. In Search and Destroy, the defenders can pretty much move anywhere and everywhere, where the offensive team really has to choose where they go. On Control, the defense kind of has to stay put and make sure that they're not giving up their point. And using your specialists in certain areas, especially with Control, is going to help you out a lot. Have someone with TACCOM when you're playing pubs, you can easily just hop someone out through here, get a couple spawns, and just immediately hop through.
Annihilator ready.
However, if you have someone like an Ajax that can use their shield or throw a 9 bang into a point, you can easily hop through this and take them out. So same as Hardpoint, same as Search and Destroy, specialists are still going to be a key on these, and finding out the ones for your team comp is going to be just as key as finding out the right guns and play styles. So to wrap up Control, being that this is the last game type, I feel like this will probably get treated the same as Capture the Flag did, the same as Blitz, and the same as Uplink from games before. It's going to be that game type that most people probably won't play just because it's not familiar to most people. It won't get voted for if there's a voting system, and the few games that you do play, you'll have at least half the players on the team not knowing what they're doing. So, if you're watching this video, and you're getting educated, use that information. You now have the tools to go out there in a game type that's new, and apply it to get victory. It always helps to make sure you got the knowledge, so use it. But with that being said, that concludes the game types for our introductions. As we move on through the year, we'll get on to more intermediate and expert game types, and going into more in-depth strategies as film and guns, patches, new strategies, and new ideas come by. But the next thing we're going to be looking at is maps. We're going to take a look at a few of the maps that have come out, the ones that have been announced, just delving into them, looking at different ones and seeing where things are going, looking at certain spots and places that have more traffic, and just helping you guys on some of the maps maybe you haven't seen yet if you're new to the game, or looking at some spots that you may not have thought to watch people. And if you're happening to watch this video, I can give you one that I found most recently, that just as a tidbit into the next map, because we'll probably take a look at this one first. This little spot right here on the bags. You can hop up here, you can see back into that spawn, you're guarded on this side, and you can hop up and see back into there. We know there's a hard point there, there's a bomb site there, and you can see people back in the spawn there. Good place to get a few quick kills, especially if you're watching an objective. We'll just let that be a little teaser into things to come, and as we come back to the next video, we'll start to look more at introductions into League play maps. As always, I'm Master RKO, and I will see you all in the next one. Adios.